But right now I have John Briggs with me. John is an author, and if you go to Amazon or one of the sites up there, you'll see all the books that he has written. He was on here last to talk about Judy Garland, and these books are written for children, or young people. I don't say children, but young people. Here's a copy of his book right here, and we'll be showing you a heading of it on the cover of it on our screen there. I guess they're just bringing that in there. Okay. John, why did you decide to write about Pete Seeger? I mean, I'm glad you did, but why?
Well, one, I've been a fan for 30-odd years, and two, there are no children's books about him. And I thought, yeah, it was kind of a shock to me, too.
You did a little research there. And
I said, you know what, here's someone I think a lot of parents and grandparents would want their kids to know about. They should know what Pete Seeger did, what he accomplished. So, created a book.
Yeah.
You know?
So what did he accomplish?
Well, let's see, where to start? I guess the big thing he's known for in New York State would be cleaning up the Hudson River.
Yeah.
But it didn't, right, the Clearwater Sloop, right.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop there. Because of his work on the Hudson, it ends up leading to the Clean Water Act of 1974, which cleans up every river in the United States. Yeah. So really, the Hudson's just sort of that starting point. But he's the man who taught Martin Luther King the song "We Shall Overcome," right? Which becomes.
Did he really?
Yeah, he played it for Martin Luther King in 1957. Now, King actually knew the original. A woman who wrote the music for it and some of the lyrics. Her name was Mother Louise Shropshire. But Pete took her song and then sort of reworked it into "We Shall Overcome." In 1957, he's doing a show in Tennessee, and in the audience is Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, and Ralph Abernathy.
Oh my gosh. Pete
sings the song, and as Martin Luther King is leaving with Ralph Abernathy, he's sitting in the car and he's humming the song, and he says, "Boy, that song sure sticks with you." And a few years later, a guy named Guy Carawan records it, becomes the version we know now. It's sped up a little bit from Pete's version, and that's the anthem of the Civil Rights Movement. But he actually played it for Martin Luther King first in 1957.
Is that something? Well, so there is that should be big enough.
Yeah.
But what else did he do?
Well, let's see. Where should we go in? I mean,
well, we have photos, so
right.
Can we run through the photos
sure.
maybe, and then we'll talk about more.
So we have
Greg. Okay, what is this now?
That is the Peekskill Riots in 1949. That's a show that Pete did with Paul Robeson, and later, when they actually did the concert, Woody Guthrie was on that as well. And a lot of people showed up.
Boy, Woody.
Yeah, Woody Guthrie, Pete Seeger, and Paul Robeson in concert together in Peekskill. And what happened was, because Paul Robeson was an out communist, I mean, he was a known communist. His son went to school in the Soviet Union. Protesters showed up, and they flipped over cars. They smashed Robeson's windows with rocks and baseball bats. They rescheduled the concert, and 2 weeks later, Pete did it. And Pete was in the car with Woody Guthrie and Lee Hayes, who, of course, he worked with in the Weavers and the Almanac Singers. So they attacked Pete's car. But not only was Pete and Woody and Lee in there, but Pete's wife, Toshi, and his two small children, including baby Micah, were in the car, and they attacked it. They smashed Pete's windows. So Toshi ends up throwing her body over the children to protect them.
From the glass?
From the glass, right. And Woody hung up a red shirt. Of course, it would be red, the color of the Soviet flag. Sure. That would be Woody. He was tormenting them, apparently. But he put a flag over the window to block the rocks coming in. Pete later took the rocks and built his chimney for his cabin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he took those rocks so he could remind himself of the riot.
Yeah,
but that was in 1949, so it was just some photos of that.
It was a difficult time. Now, what is this now?
That is Pete and Toshi's wedding photo, about 1942.
Nice.
So, and you talk about a gutsy move. He marries a Japanese woman, a half-Japanese woman, during World War II. The man had courage, I'll give him that.
Well, let's face it, the Japanese, if I can digress just a bit, the Japanese in this country were treated very shabbily.
Exactly.
Because they were loyal Americans, they grew up here, some were second, third, fourth generation, and they were sent to internment camps, and if you ever read any of George Takei material, he tells it like it happened. Well, it happened to him. So, yes, he was brave.
Well, he met Toshi at a square dance in 1939, 1940, and she asked him out, and, a few years later they were married.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Pete and Woody. Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. I don't know what year that is, but that's just them playing somewhere in the countryside.
Yeah.
If you look in the middle, this is interesting. It's taken in 1944. It's in Washington, D.C., and if you look in the very middle of that photo is Eleanor Roosevelt.
That's her looking down kind of in the square.
Yeah, she was a big fan of his work with the Almanac Singers, and she liked folk music in general. Pete was in Washington, D.C. performing. He was in the Army at that point in special services, and so he's doing a concert for Eleanor Roosevelt.
So that's a picture of the book.
That's the cover, yep.
Yeah. You must have had a lot of fun researching this.
This was a labor of love.
Yeah.
Books can be written for one of two reasons, money or love, and this was definitely a labor of love. So.
Yeah.
Okay,
what is this?
Oh, 1921. This is a baby Pete Seeger. If you look in the lower right corner of that photo, that's an 18-month-old Pete Seeger in his father's lap.
Oh my God.
He's there with his two brothers who are 4 and 6, and his mother, who is a classically trained violinist, is playing violin. And actually his parents...
he came from a really musical
family.
family.
His father was a famous music professor and later taught at Juilliard, what became Juilliard. And in this photo, his parents are touring the South. They're playing classical music in all these small towns in West Virginia, North Carolina. And what happened was they would play the music. Of course, they play their Bach and their Mozart. And a lot of the local musicians would come up to him and say, well, do you want to hear us play? Maybe we'll play some bluegrass for you. And Pete's father was like, yeah, absolutely. And after
music is music, isn't it?
After a few concerts, he went, my God, these are some of the best musicians I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And Pete's introduction into folk music started that way.
Incredible. Yeah.
And by the age of 4, he could play half a dozen instruments. It was just bred into him.
Well, it's interesting. I was going to bring in, I have a poster from the 8th Step when he was here on Mother's Day to perform. So he's an icon. I think everybody knows who he is, and the clear water, of course, and clean water. And I think, as a matter of fact, the first person I thought about when I saw this Colorado spill with the orange water, I thought about Pete Seeger, and I thought, oh my God, I bet he was just going.
Well, even just a few years before he passed, I mean, Occupy Wall Street was occupying, of course, the lower end of Manhattan, and he led a giant walk. Thousands of people ended up following him, and I know the publicist for Occupy Wall Street. It's a friend of mine, and he said Pete Seeger was the one celebrity we were actually happy to see.
Yeah, okay, you didn't want to see the other.
Right, they said, because they understood, they knew he'd been in the fight. They knew he was part of it. It wasn't there for a photo op.
He was always part of the activism. And we need people who are activists and are willing to step up and speak against injustices and speak against what we're doing to the environment. I mean, there's so many things that we need, but people are afraid. They go, well, maybe, I have a business. I really don't want to come out and say it, But, we all have to stand up, not just on Facebook, right?
Right.
But we need to get out and say that.
Well, part of the reason the book's called The People's Singer is because he was a man of the people, and he had this ability to reach not only people who are from his generation, but there were these college kids at Occupy Wall Street who said, yes, we admire him. And I thought, even younger, this book's aimed primarily at middle school students, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and I thought my own son is 11, he's actually 12 now, but he loves reading about, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, and he was like, yeah, I'd love to read this. They sort of, their own sense of social consciousness is being formed, and I thought this is a chance for them to learn about that.
This is what we need to do, is really make sure that they get the right information, or plenty of information to choose from. But what's your next book?
Actually, the next book is about the Wild West. And then the one after that will be about Jim Thorpe, the next biography about...
Oh, Jim Thorpe.
Well, we have the Olympics coming up, and Jim Thorpe's sort of a childhood hero of mine.
Oh, my gosh.
The Nobel Olympian.
Yeah, oh, my gosh. What happened in the 39, wasn't it?
It was far earlier, 1912.
12. Okay.
Yeah, when he lost his gold medals.
He was the Native American.
Yeah, he's a Native American, but he's in the Football Hall of Fame. He was an amazing athlete, so he's probably next.
Yeah, that's a good one. I saw the movie about Jim Thorpe. It was really an inspiring movie, too.
Well, I've been to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania.
He had a tough time.
He did, and actually his child football coach was Pop Warner.
Oh, really?
Right, at the Carlisle Indian School. There was a real man, that was Jim Thorpe's football coach.
That's your next book. He's got so many books in him that it's going to be...
They keep coming.
Yeah, really. It's going to be like the encyclopedia of John Briggs.
I could live with that.
You could live with that.
Yeah, really, yeah.
How can they get your book?
It goes into wide distribution next week. Right now it's available on Amazon and also at the Open Door bookstore right here in Schenectady. Across the street, it's available at the Open Door.
About getting it out there. So if you want to do a favor for your kids, get them a book. Tell them, put down that smartphone, put down that Xbox, and read a book.
That's right. Read a little bit. Read this book.
Read this book. Right. Any book, but read this one.
Right. Start with this book and then move on. Right.
Then you'll know what you've been missing when you read another one. You can look for more of his books. John, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much for...
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, but I want to thank you for doing what you're doing, because these books are so essential.
Thanks for letting me talk.